Right.
So I'm just getting the weeds on hours.
Okay, good afternoon or morning, everybody. It's June 6th. We're here for our regular Board of County Commissioner meeting. Let me pull up. Can you pull up our agenda? All right, if I could ask everyone to please silence your cell phones and join me in a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Marcella is out on vacation today, so it is just Commissioner Fiedler and I. Let's see, Commissioner Fiedler, do you have any community informational items for us today? Oh, yes, I do. Yes, he just brought that up. We'll add, yes, oh, there we go.
I said it more quietly.
Yeah. Do you have any changes that are needed on the agenda that we have before us?
I don't have any changes.
I don't either. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second. Any further discussion?
None for me.
Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, now into community informational items.
Nothing for me.
Okay. I don't have anything today either. Maybe community cleanup day is coming up. What day is that?
Saturday.
June 10th?
Saturday, June 10th, yeah.
June 10th. Okay, this Saturday.
And Friends of Lake County's first volunteer opportunity is Friday,
Is the 9th, yes, 9 AM.
9 AM.
Where can folks find a link for that on the tourism website?
Yep, on
Does
Visit
it-
Leadville Twin Lakes, they can just type in Friends of Lake County, or you can just go on Google and type in Friends of Lake County, and the first link is Visit Leadville Twin Lakes.
Great, and there's like
Sign
6
up.
different dates to,
6 different dates and then an ongoing, which is more like trail monitoring. And all the information for that, I'm happy to include, anyone that clicks on the link, you'll be able to sign up and your email address will be added.
all right, excellent, thank you. All right, and we'll move on to public comments on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments?
You're just in time.
Yes, you did. Could you please state your name for us, Christy?
Hi, my name is Christy Galarza. I work for Lake County Builder Generation as the facilitator. Jeff heard this last night, but I wanted to share it with you. Just a new data point that we recently came across. Unfortunately, Lake County has the highest number of cost burden renters in the state, with 63% of our residents being cost burden, which means they're paying more than 30% of their household income on housing. It's higher than Summit and Eagle County. And so as we continue to work on this problem, you've heard me say this a million times, we just need to try to pursue any and every policy we possibly can to make this community more livable.
Thank you. Can you have any other public comment online or in the room? Please feel free to unmute or raise your hand. I don't think so. All right. Going once, going twice. All right, moving on. We'll move into new business. All right, first on our agenda, we have consideration of a rec advisory board appointment of Bonnie Katopoulos. We have our Parks, Recreation, Open Space Director, Adam Bay, here to present to us.
Sure, do I need to pop up and I get back here?
You can stay back there, I think, yep.
Hopefully this is a quick item here. Yes, I'm here to promote candidacy of Bonnie Katopoulos as a new member, volunteer member of the Rec Advisory Board. Bonnie had reached out to Matt and others at the Rec Advisory Board, and I believe that information was fed up to Commissioner Fiedler. Bonnie is relatively new to the community, a couple of years, though her husband grew up here in Leadville. She's most recently been working as a critical trial project manager. She's got a lot of volunteer experience in board operations, understanding rules, regulations, organizational structure. She's got some fundraising experience, raising $110,000 and such in the public health field. The Rec Advisory Board has discussed her candidacy and approve of that, and Matt has said, Matt Bain, the new board chair, has said that she could bring a new perspective to the board. I would recommend a request from the BOCC, a recommendation to advance her candidacy at the next Rec Advisory Board meeting, which would be this Thursday, June 8th.
Very good.
And that's about it there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't think I have any questions for you on the request, Commissioner Fiedler.
No, that sounds great.
All right, appreciate all that background. I'll entertain a motion for the appointment of Bonnie Katopoulos to the Rec Advisory Board.
So moved?
I'll second. Any further discussion? Nothing from me.
Not for me, just thanks for starting to, work with Rec Advisory Board and get some new membership and energy. It's good.
Yeah, and actually, I guess I do have we've, now that pros is pros and not just kind of programming, and I'm sure you've kind of been downloaded with comments from other folks on the Rec Advisory Board, but it
Oh, I'm well. How are you doing?
incorporating open space and activity going on regarding open space maybe more of a new realm for the rec advisory board, so it'll be exciting to see how that all integrates and how those folks kind of get enthusiastic about working on and promoting and doing that kind of community outreach and feedback loop
Yeah,
on all things rec.
I'm looking forward to it. I've requested from Matt to have a standing item to do for me as a pros director to start working on something.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. All right. Hearing no further discussion, all those, I'm getting there. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Moving on to number 2, we have consideration of the following special event permits. And we have Marla Bond here to present to us the 4th of July Cookout and Fly-In, the Colorado Bow Hunters Jamboree, the Courage Classic, the Copper Triangle, Leadville Marathon and Heavy Half, the Leadville LTF Triathlon Series, Run Camp, the Silver Rush 50 Run and Mountain Bike, and the Leadville Stage Race. Marla, do you have anything else?
These are all reoccurring events. We have approvals from all referral agencies and oversight with Claire and Office of Emergency Management for any and all of the trail, the Leadville Marathon, through all of the races under the Leadville Race Series.
Great.
Do you want to do them all together?
I don't see a problem with that. I don't have any specific questions, but
Yeah, I'm fine with
reason
that.
not to.
As
Do them
long as you don't
collectively?
have any discussion or questions regarding a specific application or anything like that, I think you can go on and approve them all together if that's what you wish to do. But to the extent there be any separate discussion, you wanna have to do them separately.
I don't have any discussions. I've looked through them and yeah, like, as you said, they're reoccurring events and there weren't issues raised or unresolved issues raised by any of the reviewing departments or agencies, so I'm good.
Same. Yep. I'm gonna take a stab at.
I will take a stab at that. So I move that we approve the special event permits for the 4th of July Cookout and Fly-In, Colorado Bow Hunters Jamboree, Copper Triangle, Courage Classic, Leadville Marathon and Heavy Half, Leadville Stage Rush, Run Camp and MTB Camp, and Silver Rush Run and MTB. I'm sorry, I was reading those off of the packet, not the agenda, so hopefully.
Did we get the triathlon?
Don't see.
I don't see that on.
LTF
Okay.
Triathlon Series. And,
No,
That's
it
the
is.
Run Camp.
okay, all right, so we got it all. I will second. Any further discussion?
None for me.
Nothing for me either. Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Moving on to number 3, we have consideration of professional service agreement with the Guadalupe Project and Solvista Health contract. And Janine McGee, our Department of Human Services Director, is online. Janine, do you want to jump in and give us a summary?
So this is a contract to provide supervised visitation. And the second one is with Solvista. It's our regional contract that we use to provide prevention funding. Happy to answer questions if you all have any, but the first one is a new vendor. The second one is our standard annual contract with the region.
And I've reviewed both of those, so.
Okay, great. Janine, is this for clients? Is this a resource for clients alone?
No, the prevention grant is fabulous. I mean, not grant, the prevention funding we use for a type of criteria called Prevention Area 3. And any person with children in the household, including the children, can have their behavioral health services paid for through this resource. So all that we need to do is get the referral. And that referral quite frequently lately is coming directly from the behavioral health providers themselves whenever they have folks come in needing behavioral health services or calling to inquire about it, and there's children in the home. It can pay for the entire service itself if there is no insurance, but it can also pay for co-pays and deductibles if there is insurance. And we're using that quite a bit. We have $15,000 for Lake County for that.
Great. Excellent. Commissioner Fiedler, any other questions?
No.
I don't have anything either. Right. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the professional services agreement with Guadalupe Project and Sol Vista Health contract.
So moved.
Okay, I will second. Any further discussion?
None for me.
All right, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. And on to agenda item number 4, consideration of professional services agreement with Arc Valley Consulting, Public Health Emergency Preparedness Contract, our Leadville Senior Center Space Agreement, strengthening U.S. public health infrastructure, workforce, and data systems contract, and a retail food, school, and childcare contract. And we have our Director of Public Health, Colleen Nielsen, online for this item. Thanks, Colleen.
Yeah, thank you so much. So a majority of these contracts are all ones that we've had in the past. The first one is with Arc Valley Consulting, utilizing that person's to help with not only emergency preparedness and COVID response, but also some other entities within the county. We have our Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant, which allows us to do that work. The other one is the seniors agreement. So that is with the Upper Arkansas Area on Aging and the Council of Governments. And so that's just because they, if you guys remember, have the kitchen that is in the senior center. It's just an agreement that, yes, that is still the contract. The next one, which is pretty long, is what is called the workforce one. We had what they called Workforce One, but basically that is the one that is falling under the Strengthening U.S. Public Health Infrastructure, Workforce, and Data Systems contract. It is the funding is $247,323 for the next 5 years to use however we want, in the sense of, hey, there's a project, we could either front load it and or divvy it out. So far, we don't have that aligned, and I'll have some bigger conversations about that in the future about how we can use that effectively to kind of build our workforce and kind of sustain kind of what we have, as well as build in some new programming pieces. And then the last one is one of our environmental health pieces that we do, which is retail inspections, all the foods places, not only just restaurants, but stores and gas stations and anything that might have food in it, as well as school and childcare. So those are the 5 that are on the agenda for decision.
Thank you, Colleen.
Just add that they've all been reviewed, and just to clarify on the Arc Valley Consulting, that is actually just an amendment to the existing agreement to extend the term for this next year. But otherwise, the rest of them have been reviewed by the board.
Okay.
To extend term through this year.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that summary, Colleen. I don't have any other questions for you. Doesn't look like either of us do. I might just separate. Go ahead.
I was gonna go
for it.
move all of them. Again, since there's no questions, just gonna move them all at once. I move that we approve the professional service agreement with Arc Valley Consulting, also the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Contract, also the Leadville Senior Center Space Agreement, also the Strengthening U.S. Public Health Infrastructure, Workforce, and Data Systems Contract, and finally the Retail, Food, School, and Childcare Contract.
I'll second. Any further discussion?
None for me?
Nothing from me either. All right. Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
I'll get those DocuSign documents to you after the meeting.
Yep, and then the senior one needs to be hand signed and I'll take that back to Centacog.
Excellent.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 5 is discussion and consideration of a lodging feasibility study, and we've had a few different discussions on this. We have Adam Ducharme here, our tourism director. Adam, do you want to give us a summary of where we are at? And I think we're closing the loop on this to move
Yeah.
forward.
Yep, that's right. So I went back to HNLA, and they were open to the feedback from our last conversation about this. And I asked for a reduction in their fee of $5,000, and they were amenable to that. So they have sort of removed basically 3 bullet points from their short-term rental analysis that were more closely aligned with community planning and development. They changed the 1 bullet point regarding the future demand forecasting for short-term rentals based on Commissioner Fiedler's feedback, and they are all systems a go. So at this point, unless you have any questions or further discussion, I think we have come to a really good place with this vendor.
Excellent. And remind me, sorry,
Yep.
it's not on here, it's HNLA.
Agent, yeah, Hotel and Leisure Advisors, yep,
Yeah.
is the name of the vendor.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't have any questions. Thank you for going back to them. And,
And they are also willing to do the short-term rental analysis first, so that we can expedite that part of the process to provide analysis to the community planning and development.
perfect.
And I did also update that scope of work with community planning and development. We shared that scope with CPD.
All right. Sorry. Perfect. All right, well, I think we did approve to move forward, but then with this amendment and additional scope of work, I'll entertain a motion to award the lodging feasibility study to include the amended and additional scope of work to H&LA.
So moved.
Okay, second, any further discussion?
Not for me, just, yeah, thanks for moving it forward.
Appreciate it. All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. And move on to item number 6. We have discussion and consideration of hazard mitigation plan update requests for proposal. And do we have, yep, Claire Skeen, emergency management director is online.
Hi, everyone. So we were awarded the hazard mitigation grant from FEMA earlier this month. So this is just the RFP to select a contractor to start working on the update to that plan. This RFP is inclusive of the scope of work as well as the budget that FEMA awarded us for, and it's been reviewed by both legal and our state contact as well.
Great. I don't think I had any other questions. And Claire, remind me when we're hoping to, this is work over the next year, right?
Correct.
What's the timeline?
I'm sorry, off the top of my head. So the period of performance is until May 11th, 2025.
Okay. Excellent. Great. Sounds good. And I think we need to get together on all those post-fire flooding pieces, and I'm sure that'll be teased out through the entire process. Have to still connect with Colorado Springs Utilities on what they're going for, to do some modeling around that with their infrastructure and storage up here in Lake. But that sounds great. I don't have any other questions for you on that scope. Anything from you?
No.
Okay. So I think we can move forward.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, guys.
Will that be posted for a couple of weeks or?
Yes, so that'll be posted until June 26th, I believe. I'll have that posted on the Lake County website, the OEM website, and then Rocky Mountain e-commerce, BidNet Direct as well.
Excellent. Okay. Great, appreciate that update. Any further formal decision-making requested from us on that, Claire?
No, I just want to make sure you guys saw it, and we can go ahead and get the bidding process started.
Yeah.
Great,
Thank you guys. Have a good day.
thanks, you too. Okay, let's see. Item 7, we have discussion and consideration of county support for the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority to apply for Proposition 123 funding on behalf of Lake County. And this will be led by Jackie Wheelahan, our Executive Director of the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority.
So Proposition 123, there's several $100 million for affordable housing that will become available in the second half of this year. So that's super exciting. That was due to the enactment of Proposition 123 by Colorado voters last November. The funding will be overseen by DOLA, Division of Local Affairs, and the Governor's Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And we can apply, both the municipalities, so the city, I will be speaking to them tonight, and of course you right now. This funding is only available if the cities and counties have basically opened the gate to commit to increasing affordable housing. So it's a 3% increase per year over 3 years, or it could be, you don't have to, if you don't meet that 3% the first year, as long as you meet it within the 3-year period, then you're going to be fine. The funding that is available for, they have a lot of different buckets of money for this, and it's a little confusing to follow. They had a meeting yesterday on land banking and pursuing infill properties for communities where you could get a loan through CHAPA that might even be forgivable up to $5 million. So it's very exciting. This would also benefit developers who want to, for example, Chaffey Housing Trust wants to build on the lower parcel 12 units, and this will help him to get funding through Prop 123. And to qualify, it's got to be a development for, if it's a rental, it's got to be 60% of AMI or less. If it's a for sale unit, it's at 100% AMI or less. So we have to decide if you need to apply on your behalf, on the county's behalf, to open up that opportunity for developers, housing authority, anybody that might be interested in that funding. So I'm looking for that decision today, and we're learning more every day about this. It's exciting. We've never seen this much money come in for housing before, so we definitely don't want to miss out on the opportunity.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One is, do you know, for like with establishing that baseline and that 3%, do we currently collect the data to be able to calculate that under any of the methodologies, or is that how big a burden or hurdle is that going to be?
It's not, and
Okay,
they created a spreadsheet, and if you look at their, if you go to engagedola.org, you can pull up the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet indicates 8 units, both for Lake County and 8 units for the city of Leadville. We could, because we're looking at developing, the county's going to be putting money towards development in the city. We could do an MOU between the city and the county to allow you to capture some of the development that's happening in the city, because the county is contributing substantially to that development. So, and so I'm just going to use their numbers, because when I calculated using their tool, it came out to be essentially the same. It was actually a little bit higher. So I'm just going to use their baseline tool, 8 units for the city and 8 units for the county.
Okay, and that conversation between the city and the county to share those allocation or that credit towards units is something that Dola told you was unacceptable.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
told them our unique circumstances, most of our development would be happening within the city. And that the county is contributing to that, in a considerable amount to the city. They think that that would be fine. We just went ahead and had that understanding.
Go ahead.
The DOH clarify if the local government affordable housing commitment can come from the regional housing authority, if it needs to come from the city and the county separately.
So when we talk, so it can, they said basically you apply on behalf of the city and you apply on behalf of the county, but that the regional housing authority can do that on your behalf. And then the money can be granted to nonprofits, community land trusts, private entities, local governments. So basically by committing to do this, you're just opening up the opportunity. And then if we don't meet our goal of 16 units per year for both, then we just won't be able to apply. We have to wait. There's a timeout.
I had a second question, which was, I haven't dug too deep into Prop 123 eligible activities, but from what I've read or heard, it also covers not just building new units, but you can convert existing housing stock into affordable categories. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe that's true.
Okay. I mean, I'd personally be super interested in exploring that too as part of that funding.
Yeah, I think that would integrate well with our last work session conversation over housing stock preservation. And then that 3% increase per year, 8 units for the city, 8 units for the county, 16 per year. I mean, that includes projects that we have planned or plan to pilot, and also any other private development. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. And what does that, I have not even looked at that application. What does that look like? Oh. We've got Ann Schneider online. Ann, go ahead.
Just a similar question to Jeff's. Also, the funding, Jackie, is it right through Housing Now? The funding could be used for pre-development costs too, as far as surveying, engineering, site planning, things like that as well. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. We had a conversation with them and talked about, a master plan, if that would be, on a specific site, if that would be a coverable expense, and that was the information that we got. That was it, yes, it would be.
Okay. Any other questions for Jackie, Ann?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Jackie, what does that application look like?
So I think we want to try and apply as soon as possible so that folks can get into that first wave of money. As we know, these things tend to be very popular, and we don't know how much funding will be available after the first round. So I think we want to try and apply by July.
Okay. Great. And it'd be great to work closely with Tim and any of us if there are any other specifics on that application that might need to get some more direct input, fleshing out.
One other question, is this the program that had that rural resort category that would allow you to adjust the AMI levels? Did we did we look at that? Because I think that would help, right?
So it does have that condition in there for rural, and because we are not rural resort, we'd have to change that designation.
Okay.
Do we need to flag that in the application?
Maybe just, yeah, keep looking. I think remember that would help with, because we hit that problem where our AMI is so low that we end up having like, it just makes our subsidy gap that much bigger.
And I can reach out. I had a conversation with Connor, I had two conversations, Connor Everson with DOLA regarding Highway 123. And I had a lot of questions because it's super confusing to figure out the baseline and everything, but I will follow up with him and ask him that question.
Okay.
Can I add one thing? I do think the rural resort had some like requirements also that might make it not pencil, so I would just be a little careful.
Okay.
Maybe we could kind of tentatively have that on a work session agenda item for before the end of June, and like kind of fleshing that out and make sure that we understand where we might want to go with that request or not. That would be very helpful if you could help us set that conversation up also, Jackie.
Yeah, and I think there's no downside to opting in. I think it opens up the opportunity to bring. Yes.
Excellent. Good question. I don't think I have anything else for Jackie. Would it be possible, I suppose we can see how the application evolves, and potentially, looking at the wrong month, would you do me a favor and flip the month, please, Chris? I mean, if there are any big questions for you on that, we could always do a special meeting or look at the 20th meeting for any other specific direction you might need. But will you be able to start on that right away? Okay, keep us updated. I see no reason to not ask for your assistance. I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, yeah, so sorry, so the motion is for the county to support the housing authority's application. Okay.
Jackie to assist us in submitting our application, I think. Yeah.
Does it need to say like opt-in instead of application?
I don't think it's an application, it's a letter of commitment.
It's that, so I think opt-in is the right phrasing.
The county will commit to increasing your affordable housing stock above the baseline amount of 8 units per year for the next 3 years.
So I move that we request Jackie Wheelahan to assist the county in our local government opt-in form, Proposition 123.
I'll second.
Close enough.
All right, any further discussion?
None for me.
All right, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great, thanks, Jackie. Then item 8, discussion and direction for the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing Authority representatives Tim Bergman and Sarah Mudge to identify a scope of work to include in the inclusionary zoning nexus study. We have Ann Schneider on the line as well. And coming out of our last Regional Housing Authority meeting, there was a request for the city and county to revisit both a few things: the needs assessment, a study or scope of work to revisit zoning as a tool, and also a nexus study. So I believe, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, this agenda item is kind of to flesh out and with all the work that community planning and development has been doing in Also pursuing the further exploration and information sharing and of decision makers on the tools we do have. It would be great to have that conversation around what exactly, how we want to help inform that scope, because I don't think it's just inclusionary zoning. And we also have Christy here with village generation. But Anne, who wants to start the comment on this agenda item?
I'm sorry, I'm happy to jump in just a little bit and talk. We did place this on our work session with the Planning Commission and the board at our last Planning Commission regular meeting. So happy to send that recording over just to the top of the inbox for the board to kind of review, because we did spend quite a bit of time talking about, you know, what our previous work and proposal had been and how we vetted inclusionary zoning requirements previously. We revisited just, you know, the work that had been done before. And I think my takeaway from that work session, and happy to share it out and make sure that everybody just kind of, you know, reviews it and our takeaways, were that you know, still kind of unsure of where our thoughts are on inclusionary at this time. We really talked about liking the consensus was between the Planning Commission and the board that had assembled for the work session, that really liked the approach of incentivizing, also looking at kind of on a case-by-case basis what allocations were in front of us. We also talked about really wanting to work on the future growth plan and having Bryce create that map that, you know, we've talked about and we already actually have, but just kind of really fine tuning it as far as the availability of land and what our future growth opportunities actually are. And really wanting to have kind of a better idea of what direction we're heading in with other code revisions that are intentional in looking at how zoning is a tool in bringing about, you know, the needed changes within the community. So, you know, it was left pretty open-ended at the end of the discussion, but really an uncertainty of whether or not commissioning or spending work on the study at this point would be beneficial, or maybe it'd be very beneficial, just really unknown. And so I would suggest that, and I'm sure that time is of the essence in applying for a grant. So that's probably the difficulty that I see in being able to provide something back very quickly on the expanded scope of work. Certainly the update to the housing needs assessment. You know, Jackie is very supportive of that, and I can see where that is very beneficial. But I think extending this scope of work needs some more vetting. And so what we were thinking was creating another work session around zoning tools, land use tools, and with really trying to make sure that we get a focus on our future growth plan. So, you know, we have been talking about technical assistance in coming in and preparing us for our next comprehensive plan with a focus on a growth plan with all of the known elements that we have and bringing cohesion and, to all those collaborative efforts. So, you know, I guess I apologize to the board that I think there's some grayness here still, or, you know, certainly identifying that I think some more discussion, maybe education around exactly what this expanded scope of work that's been discussed with a consultant would entail. So, you know, I know Christy's present and, you know, she may have more information to provide as far as of that information, but I'm not sure we would be able to solve that today for a recommendation from CPD And based on what we heard from the Planning Commission and the board was that, this certainly is opening a discussion about looking at all the tools, but also recognizing the tools that have been introduced into the code, and feeling very comfortable with incentivizing development to participate in community housing goals. But just wanting to just really look at where we're at, evaluate where we're at, and make sure that moving forward we're all on the same page before maybe looking at something that has been brought before the board before and the Planning Commission before and wasn't successful. We just want to make sure that going into something that we have everyone aligned before we would probably spend time and resources in prioritizing one tool over another. So I think that would be what I would offer the board at this point is that I think this needs a bit more discussion and just making sure that we're all on the same page. Certainly honoring the ask and all of the hard work and attention and how supportive our collaborative partners are in helping us manage this very intricate and kind of at the same time, just wanting to make sure that we move forward in alignment with one another. So that's what I would offer. Happy to answer any questions as well.
I just wanted to chime in. I mean, I totally agree with the point that like inclusionary zoning isn't the only tool that we currently have or might want to develop or explore or expand. I guess, I mean, I just hope we could move, like, whether it's like having some informal discussions with some potential consultants or like figure out that scope of work faster. Because I mean, I'm recalling from the Planning Commission work session, in my mind, we just want to broaden that scope. So it's not just an economic analysis to support inclusionary zoning rules, but also, something like adding, and other economic analysis that could support conditions or requests made of applicants in subdivision or PUD permitting processes, or could inform future zoning and code changes or other land use tools that further affordable housing goals. So, I mean, to me, the point is let's get some economic analysis. So like, for example, in that PUD language we changed a while back, it's kind of vague. It opens the door to having that negotiation, but there's no criteria or analysis that we can go into a negotiation with applicants in front of us. And to me, I'd love to have that analysis again. That's not just not only the high benchmark for inclusionary zoning rules, but that could inform like that tool that we have, or inform modifying some of the other tools available to us in the land use processes. So, and I know what I read out is like still pretty vague, but if we could like have that discussion on like, how much firmer or clearer, or what are the words that consultants would recognize, and would be really helpful.
Yeah, I was, I think along those lines, I think even just the process through either that Nexus study or just that, because there's, I think just going through that exercise of collecting all of our known impacts and expenses is something that we can apply in tools we have today, but not necessarily something that is organized cohesively. And that alone, with respect to like the actual technical work of preparing staff and departments to provide that level of impact for our use, is something that we've talked about needing to really like get a grasp on with the tools that are in place. And I think that alone could then help inform those conversations that CPD is organizing on, other tools in zoning that we have, because while we're talking about inclusionary zoning, we also want to be talking about land conservation and natural resource impact. And so those are the conversations we're teeing up to have all at the same time. And I just would, I mean, the city might be more ready to include that, or request that inclusionary zoning aspect of it. I'd just be afraid that if it were to include the county, it would only scratch the surface of weaving and braiding together options. And I wouldn't want it to ignore kind of an analysis of the tools we have, and where I think the confidence is gained in getting those numbers and having departments really kind of get more familiar with how to say, you know, here's our impact to the landfill, here's our impact to human services and public health issues and the roadways and, you know, any other impacts that we have that I think we really could, you know, here's our recreation programming and goal opportunities to provide some resources in lieu of your open space requirements potentially. I think we just really get that foundation down before talking about any one tool.
And right, Sarah, I mean, you're kind of, you know, suggesting a look at impact fees or something, you know, along that line, but something very holistic that considers all of the impact to the community. And I would suggest just a couple other items is that, you know, so we have reached out to community builders to request technical assistance from a land use, housing, and economics lens. And we might consider conservation in there as well, to just make sure that we are broadening our scope to include the priorities that I hear from the board. And so hopefully I have reached back out to them. They're very interested in that. If they are able to have capacity to assist us with that. And so, you know, I think that I think I hear both. It'd be nice to have some swift action, but I'm also hearing, you know, that we need, you know, this kind of planning in order to approach this in a holistic fashion. And so that we're looking at the big picture to make sure that we are using all the right tools and as we move forward. The other thing that I would just want to let everyone know is that we have just taken in a sketch plan that we will be getting out. We are in completeness review as of today, on which contemplates 400 housing units with AMIs based at 25%. Oh gosh, I'm going to be wrong with it not having the application right in front of me, but the 75% of those, but I can't say this, 75% of those 400 units will all be AMI based units. And so I do think that we also need to kind of look at, again, that holistic approach of what is currently happening. You know, they'll want participation with the housing authority through their, they'll be looking for a public-private partnership as that comes in. So I think really kind of taking inventory of everything and you know, making sure that nothing in the approach moving forward is siloed, and that we really are looking city and county wide for what the best tools are and where we are actively right now. And so in as much as sometimes I think that we have to go slow to go fast a bit. But I do think that, you know, it's really a time to kind of take a very holistic approach, just like you were mentioning, Sarah. But at the same time, Jeff, I absolutely identify that, you know, we need something. It would be nice if we could move a little bit faster, but absolutely something that I think you're both saying the same thing, just from a slightly different approach. So I'm hoping that maybe we could get very intentional in moving forward with some work sessions specific to taking all of this into account and making a very intentional plan forward.
Yeah, I almost think too, and I don't know what that Nexus study really entails, but I feel like technical support on those impacts, and I'm sorry, Anne, you just used a phrase that I would have plugged in there for departments on, well, on like that kind of like cost recovery concept of, and like even understanding what a 400 unit development will do for departments is, I mean, we can guess, which is fine, and that's, I mean, I think we have all of the tools and experience to make our best guesses, but really to go through that exercise maybe to help all appropriate departments like truly weigh that and give them the time to
Yeah, no, I think we're saying,
Supply
yeah,
thoughtful.
I'm totally in line with what you're saying. I'm reminded of like during the CJK last application, I think you brought forward a voluntary request for sort of truck impact fee.
right.
And, you know, it was based on some research, but it would be awesome to have like a, you know, more thorough, you know, contracted out study for that kind of impact, so that we can base that on sort of known consistent numbers.
Yeah, a study or like a training almost of staff to just align what they know and the tools that they have to give some like really detailed level report to CPD for any application that's coming.
We had used the model, the town of Frederick model for their impact fees, as, you know, something suggested that we would really kind of look at, but it goes hand in hand with the growth planning, impact fees and impact cost of sustainable development is certainly would be included in that scope of work that, you know, we are looking to hopefully have engagement on. So that definitely, I agree with both of you. And so I can reach out to Liz to request a work session specific to engagement and the scope of engagement for, you know, all of those different aspects.
Okay.
So in as much as I guess what I would summarize with was in as much as you know, there's a suggestion before us for a Nexus study specific to inclusionary. I would suggest that what might be more beneficial for the county at this point is a more holistic approach, which would look at the impact of looking at what amount of developable land that we have, what's possible, and
Anne, I think you're breaking up. We lost your connection, I think. I see you on here. We don't see or hear you. Can we just get something, we'll get something on the books and that, I mean, specific to a deadline for the grant. Oh, we see you.
sorry, I don't think my connection's great, so.
That's okay. I'm sorry. Do you want to go back and finish that thought? I think you broke
Sure.
up.
So if it pleases the board, I would just suggest that I can reach out to Liz to set up a work session at the soonest available time, so that we can really get direction as staff to what the scope, what the desired scope of work would be, and
Okay.
that we can make a priority and action plan around that.
Jeez. Can I ask a question for notes?
Sure, yeah, and you have this particular grant opportunity is June 28th is the
Yeah.
deadline.
But Anne, you were saying that you would prefer that you, the county look at the developable land and then that's like right when you broke up. I think there might have been more to that statement.
Oh, sure. So I do think that, you know, we really need to kind of identify what kind of developable land is available, what is possible based on current zoning, what makes sense, and take this from a very holistic approach of, you know, all of the impacts that would be associated with that, to come out with, I'm just wondering about doing something fragmented versus coming at this with a completely aligned approach from all of those different disciplines and those obviously different impacts that so that we can address this in a sustainable fashion. So that would just be my suggestion. I'm not sure what I had said previously that you heard.
Thank you.
I think that makes sense, Anne, to get a work session and we can talk more about, you know, the physical opportunities, the timelines, any anticipated timelines that you see and can share appropriately. And then flesh out a bit better. Sorry, I'm just rehashing those points and how to leverage either the gaps missing or the information we know and apply them in the existing tools and then compare or include other potential tools. So I think just the direction we're coming out of that would be great to get a work session on the books. And what's your time frame for CPD being prepared and or also preparing? And I think it would, I don't know if the first work session or the conversation would be appropriate to include departments like Public Works, but I think we probably want to kind of wrap all of our heads around that, you know, the larger effort sooner than later. What would your suggestion be?
Yes, I think if we could potentially, if there's time available, to take the next work session and identify stakeholders that obviously have beneficial input for the board. So we could work on who, I mean, maybe that's a little quick to make sure that we can get everyone at the table to have a conversation. But I do think that, you know, this does need to be a very holistic approach. And so it will take us probably a little bit of coordination time. So I can have CC in our department work with Liz to, you know, kind of look at what's really feasible so that we can make the best use of the time when we get together so that we have the best amount of attendance. So we could work on that. And maybe it's not the upcoming work session, it might be the one after that, just to make sure that we get everyone there for you. Because I would say, you know, several members of the community development team should be assembled to provide the board input and help line out the scope of work. And also, with a little bit of time, we could do some research to just, you know, kind of look at some similar planning efforts and so that we come with some meaningful information as well. So certainly see some urgency in getting it done, but I think it'd be good for us to be prepared and have good engagement so that we can make the most of our time together. So it might be not this coming one, I can reach out to Liz and CC and we can work together as a team to see what would be the best so that we can make the best use of the board's time.
Okay. I also think we can, or you guys should think about, like you said, the community development and plant, sorry, what is the development team name?
CDT, the Community Development Team.
Community development team, includes other utilities like Parkville and SAN, and those certainly also would be, aspects to include in that infrastructure and our negotiations or conversations with any applicants. I know sanitation, Parkville might be poised to supply detailed information. I know SAN is kind of at the place we seem to be now in coordinating, kind of more system capacity information and collecting that. So it'd be nice to understand where exactly they're at with getting that stuff done, because I'm not sure if JBA is actually doing that work or still like creating that scope and what it looks like.
And I have added Jane and Dan to the CBT as representatives for Leadville SAN. So they've been added as the representatives for the CBT.
Excellent. Okay. All right, so work session, and then probably hold a place for this, our next regular meeting as well. Potentially, we'll go from there. Right.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Okay, number 9, we have discussion and consideration for the county support for Lake County Build Generation to apply for the grant to cover the cost of the upcoming needs assessment. And then the inclusionary zoning report for the Housing Coalition. So I think kind of similar topic, but as an update for Jeff as well, and I don't recall how we updated the board, Tim, or not, on that housing authority conversation. But I think the needs assessment seems like a pretty straightforward update that can be done. And then again, I think maybe that inclusionary zoning portion of that, Christy, will come later following our conversations. I know I did have a specific on the needs assessment piece, and knowing that the lodging, it seems natural that short-term rental deep dive would help inform the needs assessment with whoever is doing that project. I just want to make sure that that's actually communicated to them, and that we don't, get a scope of work that includes all of that with CPD, the level of work CPD is going to be doing, and the kind of economic commercial focus that H and LA is going to be doing.
What's the name of that study?
The lodging feasibility study.
Okay, you ready for me to go?
Sure.
So just some background on like how this happened. Jackie and I went to a conference in April, I think it was, and USDA Rural Development, the director was there and was presenting, and he was like, here are some great grant opportunities that no one in Colorado ever applies for. And so I went to him and I was like, hey, we're really interested in needs assessment. And he gave me the feedback that like, these applications are much stronger if there are multiple layers in it. So the perspective that I was taking is I keep hearing from community members and multiple levels of the Housing Coalition, it's been 4 years since we looked at inclusionary zoning. Could we start that again? I also keep hearing from community members that they'd love to see us be a little more proactive and less reactive, and also realize that there's never going to be like one policy that wraps everything in together. So can we all like take little parts of this and start working forward. Additionally, the city is going to be implementing incentive-based inclusionary zoning this fall, that has to do with density bonuses, specifically for multifamily 5 units and above, and they cannot do that until there is a nexus study. And so to me, it makes sense if why would we fund 2? If we can do the research in 1, and if you guys decide not to do it, that's your discretion. But I think it would be a waste of resources if we didn't include the county as well. And so the things that would go into the report that grant application that is due on the 28th is an update to the needs assessment, a nexus study specifically for inclusionary zoning, some training for the Leadville-Lake County Regional Housing Authority Board, and any kind of internal documents that you guys might want stood up, and potentially some support for the Chafee Housing Trust to continue to do the home ownership programming that they are doing. And the feedback that I have got from USDA RD is that package, that collective, like, we're working together collaboratively, is much more attractive than a piecemeal application. It's also like a pretty big grant bucket. It's up to $500,000. I don't think that's how big that this grant application would be. It's competitive. It's a long shot. I'm gonna be completely honest on that. But I think me and Carly and I are willing to put the work into putting this application together if there is the political will, and I certainly understand like the hesitations and wanting to make sure that it fits in with the overall efforts that are going in. And also if it's like a hard, like, absolutely not, I still have to figure out how to support the city. But we could look at other funding for just the needs assessment, which is also coming up. Like, the one that I would be looking for would be Climax, and that's coming up like also in a month. So that's my overall summary.
Go ahead, Jen.
And I've been pursuing funding for the needs assessment as well in case this doesn't happen. And through DOLA, they have an administrative grant that would be a 50% match. And I've reached out to CHAPA, and they have a 50% match as well. And so maybe we could potentially get it paid for with the 2. So we'll just have to see what you want to do, the direction you want to take, and then I will pursue those other avenues. The cost, when I reached out to Economic and Planning Systems who conducted the 2018 report, they indicated that it could be anywhere from $20,000 to $45,000 depending on the scope of work. We just wanted to update the number of units we need going forward, that sort of thing. It would be cheaper if we wanted to have a second phase that would align with the work that's been done in terms of reviewing policies and strategies and determining if they still align with market and community needs, and that would be more expensive. So the matching would be between $10,000 up to $22,500 potentially. So I will continue to pursue those just to make sure that we have that information while we work out what you want to do for this other grant opportunity.
And is there, Andrea?
Thanks, Tim. Ian, go ahead.
The one thing, thank you, Christy, that was really great to kind of outline, the multifaceted approach, and I totally can appreciate how that really helps to round out the application. I would just mention that what I heard was, makes total sense to me to create a nexus based on a proposed code. So the city already looking to incentivize inclusionary housing. So the city can react to a proposed code, and that makes total sense to me. But not having any proposal that has, any momentum yet or has been vetted through planning, I think it'd be harder for the consultants to respond to that a bit. So I would suggest that I wouldn't be hesitant in maybe applying for a nexus to support a proposed code. That would be, in the world of planning, that makes total sense. And so I think it wouldn't be viewed as kind of a fragmented approach. It's more creating a nexus specific to a proposed code, and whether that's, it sounds like they're incentivizing, but they're going to get more deliberate in their incentivizing. So I would just encourage you to consider that the nexus is being done, the basis would be intentional to a code, and that makes complete sense. And so I think that would still be, really beneficial within your grant ask. So that would just be my 2 cents.
Okay, sorry, I just need a little clarification. So based on what you've heard, you would say that you would be supportive of exploring a nexus study that is specific to density-based incentive? Or are you just referencing that for the city? I'm just having a little trouble following.
Sure. So not really saying that I would be supportive. I mean, I think what I would say is that it makes sense to ask for the scope of work to include a nexus based on a proposed code. So if the code is already there, and that's being drafted, and the next part would be providing the rationale for any kind of monetary calculation, then it would make sense to apply a nexus to that. So what I'm just saying is that in as much as we might be saying we want a little more time to explore what our plan is, the city already has code. And so for that, creating the nexus is like right in line with the steps that you would take in order to create new zoning regulations. So I guess that's what I'm saying, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I also want to add, and Tim, I'm curious on your thoughts on this, like just kind of trying to hammer home that concept of like pulling back, like what the nexus study and how the information for the result of the product of the nexus study will be. Through all of our studies, they're only as good as the information that we can provide for them. And I just really feel like we, having gone through the cost recovery, I think that we definitely want to make sure there's some preparation for all the county departments to be able to participate in this. And there has to be an appreciation of that level of resources to put towards the participation of this. And I don't think you can do the nexus for the city without including county departments, because the landfill, human services, all those things are also impacted with any city development. And/or if you're talking about, potential annexation and incentivizing or disincentivizing that, there's a whole host of it. So I think that the concepts are not being debated. It's like just an ask to understand how many resources we put to that process on top of the other projects and processes that we are teeing up to get through ourselves with the county. Anything else to add or better articulate there, Tim?
No, I think it's, it's just the resource constraints of trying to ensure that we get the best thing out of the study that we can get and understanding what goes into it. Yeah, and I agree with the commissioner, it's not the concepts at all being debated, but ensuring we're meeting the needs. For a Nexus study, so the more I've researched it, right, like it is just, it's a big commitment, it's a big project, and one that's worthwhile, but ensuring that the entire county can participate and we get the best out of it.
Yeah, so I am certainly willing to reach back out to EPS. They've been like super willing to talk to me, even though I'm like, I don't have buy-in, I don't have funding, like, I'm just curious. And I could ask them, like, in your experience in doing Nexus studies, where are you pulling the data? Like, how much of a local burden is this? And I can report that information back to you guys by email if that's helpful.
Yeah, or maybe a specific question of like, I mean, if the scope is like just for city code or, you know, policy, like what can you estimate the incremental cost to do it county-wide? Because to Sarah's point, I mean, it seems like I could imagine it being like not that much bigger scope, because you're directly impacting some of the same services, because they're county services, and the city boundary is so narrow. I mean, sort of just geographically. Yeah, so sorry, that direct question to EPS or I don't know, does EPS do the Nexus study or so?
Yeah, so.
It'd be interesting to ask
Well,
that, like,
I mean, we would go out for RFP, of course.
but
But since they did our Nexus study, our needs assessment, we would probably have cost savings in going with them and bundling the two together. And what they had explained when I talked to them about like what this Nexus study would inform, it would be saying like what the cost of building this unit would, like the required unit would be. And so that would be informing the fee in lieu policy. So I think maybe you all are thinking of Nexus in a much broader perspective than what I was presenting. All I was saying is like, if there was an inclusionary zoning policy that had a fee in lieu component, what is the appropriate fee in lieu cost? And that is the data that they would likely be. So it's not impact fees, it's not a full Nexus study, it's just a Nexus study for inclusionary zoning, what it costs to, what the developer can pay to not produce those units.
Okay, and I would, I guess, go back to Anne's comment on like, through our code that sort of mimics that intent of inclusionary zoning with the planned unit development, what is in code for that? I think it would be a misstep or a missed opportunity to not include the existing tools in this new assessment, because it's not necessarily just, well, I'm building 20 units, I'm required to have one per the percentage or the ratio, and so what's the fee in lieu of that one that I don't need to build? Like, our PUD has kind of I think a broader ability to have that negotiation that's not so based on the formula. And so I think there's a bigger opportunity to include that, and I would definitely say that it should, a Nexus study based on the existing tools or intended tools, thinking of the city including inclusionary zoning or talking about inclusionary zoning, is absolutely a must rather than just inclusionary zoning.
So what you're talking about is like impact fees rather than inclusionary zoning. They're two different tools, right? And like my understanding, and I may be confused about this just because of the regional housing authorities statutory laws, my understanding is we could not implement impact fees until we either had a sales tax or a property tax funding housing. And that might be specific to the Regional Housing Authority, that might not be a rule for county and city, I'm not sure. But that was my understanding, and that's why I was only looking at inclusionary zoning and not impact fees overall.
I don't think impact fees are our only tool, like within PUD, or I don't have the language in front of me, and maybe I'm misremembering the details, but like we have the authority to offer incentives in that PUD process, so.
Sure, but I'm talking about like so there's two different kinds of nexus, right? I think the way that Sarah's defining it is like full nexus, and what I was proposing is like nexus light, that is only about inclusionary zoning, right? You can have a nexus study on pretty much any policy that requires a fee in lieu. It is your legal backstop to make sure that you are not overcharging.
Yeah.
I think you are, I'm just, do you not think there's a benefit to being sure that there are those layers of, understanding impacts more broadly in the existing?
I think it's a
code?
legal
Because it's-
question. And it might have just been an assumption on my part that requirement to get a sales tax or a property tax before you can do impact fees
Yeah, that's a
is just with the region, but you remember that, yeah?
I do remember,
Yeah.
and I agree with you, I don't know if it's specific just to housing authority.
Well, I think it did, I don't know. And go ahead, but I mean, the county could impose its own impact fees.
Right. You're talking about two completely different things. And then there's like, so if you're just talking about creation of a fee in lieu versus the set aside that inclusionary would require, and then there's nuances in there. Sometimes you want to ratchet that up if you don't want them to contribute funds and you actually want built units. So there's a whole, we're kind of talking about two different things. We're talking, the county would like to look at this in a more holistic approach of impact from development, and what is possible. And Chrissy, your ask is you want to really compartmentalize this into just a nexus, creating a basis, the rough proportionality of if you don't do the set aside, what should that be in the fee in lieu. So this is you're just trying to establish a fee in lieu, just like our school land dedication. You're just trying to establish a fee in lieu with it. And the county's approach wants to look at this in a more holistic approach of sustainability and impacts of development in the community. So you're just kind of, both in different approaches about it, but yours is very, Chrissy, your ask is very specific just to creating a fee in lieu of not participating in
creating a physical unit, right?
Yes.
And that's like because the cost, again, like not only the cost of the community to then support an application, but you, Christy, are talking about that cost of physical construction, so that if they don't include that in a project, then the jurisdiction can in theory, use those funds collected and apply that to building that unit somewhere else.
Yeah, so this would go towards multiple of your all's goals, right? It could generate funds for the Regional Housing Authority. It could generate units that the Housing Authority would manage for deed restriction. Yeah.
But I guess I'm just trying to say, like, okay, this is interesting. We have, I think, the inclusionary zoning is very much based on that formula and that requirement. And in the tools that the county currently has, and I believe the city's been through the plan unit development process too, there's a bit more flexibility on those negotiating conversations that happen with community development staff that are not based on a formula that could increase. I mean, they could they could be better than a formula that's in place. So, yeah, I guess I'm like, I don't think anyone thinks it can hurt to do that. I just would hate to, again, in process two, like, be like, fine, the county will participate, but you bring us something that's like super surface level and like not informative of the tools we have and what is actually on the table within the timelines of actual applications being submitted and CPD working in these things. And so, one, like, hate to do work that's not actually gonna be used. Two, hate to do work that's not gonna fall in the timeline of what is actually the demand. And three, hate to do work that gives the community a perception that this is the answer and doesn't also inform and educate the community on all the other tools. And then when the county doesn't participate for whatever reason, we look really bad.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's.
Can I just like, can we just take like a step back out of the weeds for a second?
Yeah.
And just say like, this grant is a long shot. And maybe we just throw it in there to see if we can get funding for it. And then we will have more time before we even like find out if we are awarded to talk about it more. And before we even like issue an RFP to like inform it more. At the very least, I think the study could help you guys inform more of your PUD process to see like what it would look like, but wouldn't necessarily need to inform inclusionary policy.
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be open for discussion. I think what we're suggesting too, though, is that we feel our PUD tool is very strong, and it could also limit potentially what we might be able to negotiate stronger outside of a formula. You know, we have some projects that we are hoping are coming online that might exceed what you know, that might bring forth because they are nuanced with funding. They are nuanced by a variety of different things. And so I don't think that we need to be dismissive of what our zoning and kind of our unique community and looking at our parcels and our uses and the tools that we're using. You know, there is a possibility that it could box us in a bit too. You know, there's projects, private projects coming forward that have their own guidelines because of their funding that are going to hit certainly big goals within our community housing goals. And so, yeah, just consideration, I think of, whereas, you know, it really, if we have it, unless we codify it, you know, it's not going to be something, and I just don't think we're prepared to do that. I guess that's because I think that we want to kind of really be very intentional instead of just kind of, you know, oh, this is something good, this is something good, this is something good, this is something good. The big picture of that is the administration, the understanding by the public, how it works into our code is very intricate. And so we want to make sure that what we're doing is effective, efficient, and actually achieves the goal. And we're not checking a box just because we're checking a box because inclusionary is good. We need to make sure it's a good fit for the community and that we don't have more powerful tools potentially. I think that's kind of the baseline of bottom line of what we might be seeing.
I think it'd be great for Ann and Jackie and Christy to have that conversation with EPS on like that Nexus study information and where everybody is thinking they would be able to apply it. Because it can't, I mean, if it's really mostly around that construction costs, yes, we could use that information for negotiations, but yeah, how we couch that in the purpose of for the county and the city, I think will be important.
Okay, so I will reach out to EPS and hopefully get something on the books with Jackie and Ann. I will also try to get that answer from, ooh, too many tabs open. EPS on, the impact of pulling data specifically on county departments, even if it is just specific for the city. And I'll get back to you.
Yeah, and that impact on county data for the Nexus study, like in understanding what it is they plan to produce, and maybe Ann and Jackie can help like with that kind of aspect, sharing that aspect to EPS of like, okay, if we want some exercise to apply to current existing tools, how does that look different than a Nexus study potentially? But I think also Ann is probably working on that with community builders in the scope that you're trying to create, Ann, on actually applying that. But yeah, yes, Christy, and if we can have space for understanding what it is we would be asking for if it was something different or additional, would be helpful.
Sounds great.
Great. Thank you. Okay, and then, well, I guess still on that though, needs assessment, I feel like these, so year one grant will include all of these things, 5-ish things. I only got to listing 2 of them. But will we be triggering the needs assessment regardless? Or do you think that this will be happening in tandem? Because I feel like we can do this.
Jackie and I are gonna work pretty collectively. We're gonna get that needs assessment funded somehow.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it out.
Okay. Is
More
the
to come.
USDA, the grant application is June 28th. What's the award anticipation, and are they the same as DOLA in that you can't actually initiate anything to have any grant funds go towards it?
You can't get under contract until it's funded, is that the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so then we should talk about that whole timeline compared to the short-term rental, the lodging feasibility and the short-term rental and the moratorium, and probably some of these, the timeline with some of these applications anticipated,
Yeah,
and whether or not it is
the
even
other
worth to
one that I'm
include in
looking
that.
at is Climax, and I think it's probably around the same time. It's gonna be funding in the fall. So if you get the funding in the fall, you're still looking at not getting your needs assessment done until the end of this year, beginning of next year.
Yeah.
Which I know is not the answer that you wanted, but it's just the reality of how.
And maybe that is something, yeah, that needs to be looked at on funding more swiftly.
Right, so if we collectively decide like we can't wait that long, I think we we could maybe talk about how we could pull the 2 things out, and see how we can do it faster, but we need to talk to EPS, talk about timeline and things like that, but Jackie and I will keep you appraised of what we know.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important to get that done pretty quickly. All right. Excellent. Okay, item 10, our update from Jackie and the Regional Housing Authority on DOLA, the DOLA grant, and our next steps.
So we had a great conversation with DOLA last week, following the county's work session. We have decided that the Housing Authority should pursue a multi-phase project, with phase 1 being 20-unit development, while at the same time pursuing surveying, engineering, and planning for some of the other bigger sites that we've talked about so that we have some more projects coming in the pipeline for additional phases. The idea was that we need to get some units on the ground as soon as possible, and this was the best way to achieve that, with also being thoughtful and considerate of our partners as we move forward to develop those additional phases. So I was very excited after the conversation with them, because previously we were getting a lot of pushback on the number of units for the phase one. And the reality is, we're a brand new organization with no experience, and 20 units is a lot. So we want to be successful, we want to show the community that we're engaged and want to make this happen. So I appreciate the county's consideration and discussion regarding additional funding so that we can do that. We've created a new budget, and the match for that budget has increased dramatically. So it was $296,000 with the city and county match. The new match is going to be $678,000 for the 20 units. It will, however, include the tap fees, which we did not include in our previous budget. And DOLA's contribution will remain the same. So they've indicated that they are not opposed to this at all at this point in time. So I'm very happy with that outcome. So that's my update.
So was the original county cash match? It was a majority of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And as we had talked about while pursuing, the planning, surveying, and engineering of those bigger sites, also adding the child care component to it. And I think that would meet everyone's needs. It would check boxes for DOLA, and it would be great for the community. So we didn't want to pivot on that and do things too quickly and not plan appropriately. So we want to conduct a master plan prior to just moving on to those different sites.
So our infrastructure grant will help provide support for that master planning?
It's included in that, and really it's, if the county contributes the ARPA funds, as, we talked about in that work session that we had, then it's really the county's gonna be, because the DOLA match remains the same, but the city county contribution goes up.
And our 20 unit, okay. What's our status, Tim, with the hospital and?
I have a call with John today at 5.
Okay.
So we're still trying to figure out what they would like from it. Figure out a way to tell them that.
Okay.
You're
all right.
revealing your negotiation strategy.
They're not here.
Jackie, the 20 units, I think right now the lands are the school district and the hospital site. And in pursuing the kind of overall the phase development project, that gives us some plan C, D, and E potentially. Okay, all right. That's just helpful for kind of the general approach as like the targets continue to move. Okay. Any questions for you?
No, I think that's
It's
good.
like whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, that makes sense to me to move forward with something that we can handle, and that's great that DOLA is willing to be that flexible.
It's exciting. It's, we'll be able to produce something much quicker than we thought. And I'm very happy at how supportive they've been. I'm gonna have to redo the narrative, and they even offered to, look at it and make sure that I have the correct language in there to make sure that we go forward. They also indicated that we are not alone in running into all these struggles. that the other communities have been to. And they want to see us, succeed as we want to as well, so.
Yeah. It's really nice to see state partners continue to evolve in their approach of, requirements and understanding of the challenges of communities like ours. I think we've seen that I've seen it over the last like 7 years, even across like CDOT and all that, but with all of this funding going out, it's encouraging to see that kind of adaptation to, that technical support offering and administrative support and just the flexibility and understanding. So I appreciate that of them. And we can roll into item 11.
Well, and this just reminded me that one thing I wanted to add on the agenda, just mentioned it. We had the opportunity to tour Fading West on June 13th at 11 a.m. I encourage anybody who's interested in seeing that facility. I went on a tour a year and a half ago, and I was amazed. It was such a clean environment. It was really incredible to see what they're doing. So if you would like to join us for that.
When's the date again?
June 13th at 11 a.m.
You driving everybody down in a bus?
Heck yeah.
No, I'm not driving a Jag. No, I'm just kidding.
Do you know how long that tour is? Because I think we have a.
Work session that
hearing.
one.
I mean, we
It's
can.
scheduled from 11 to 12:30.
It's pretty quick. I mean,
So,
it's one big room of lots of things happening, like the aid stations, and it's just pretty overall, and it's good.
Great. All right. Okay, so thank you for the update. And our last agenda item is the discussion on the remaining American Rescue Plan Act funding, which our allocation that remains is $772,074. And we've had a few work session conversations around this last Tuesday, was it? We kind of feel landed in a pretty good place of like prioritizing housing period and dispersing that across piloting and enhancing some human services programming for housing preservation and helping with keeping people in homes and addressing housing conditions and repairs, as well as being open to any allocation that might be needed for the housing authority and projects and programs. We also have don't know why the name always escapes me, the $450K allocation for this year and next year that are available.
LATC.
Yes, thank you. And I don't know that we've gotten, I don't think Human Services has had time to give us, I know Janine's working on it, on what that might look like, but I don't know that we have enough information, maybe we do, to actually divide up the 772,000, or can we just give you general direction?
Yeah, no, we haven't seen that from Janine, and then given that we have this surplus of the TANF funding, there's some other options there. For DHS, we are working on hiring and wrap around the housing navigator to help families experiencing homelessness. I think that you can give staff general direction for the supplemental budget, or just appropriating the funds towards housing with those broad buckets, and then ability to draw it down. Or just making it public that you're intending for the rest of this funding to go towards housing.
Okay. Should be, what do you think is?
I mean, I think we should just say we're allocating that, and and start, getting that clarity in place.
Definitely, okay.
So,
Go ahead.
well, so do we need to vote on that, or can we just give direction from this meeting?
Let's do formal direction,
Okay.
and then, like you said, though, include in that motion, just kind of continual updates on like the development of the programming across the Housing Authority and Human Services, and understanding what those budgets as developed are coming to look like.
Okay, sorry, that 772074 that's mentioned here, I don't have in front of me. Had we talked about that? Is that the number that we were putting just into housing, or is that the total, where that's the remaining amount that we were gonna put into a combination of housing and housing within DHS? Okay, so.
Dedicated to housing, and in that work, we mean to enhance and or create programming across Human Services and the Housing Authority.
And potentially elsewhere in the
True,
county.
yes.
Okay, I'll take it, I can take it as that.
Okay, excellent.
So I move that we direct staff to create a supplemental budget appropriating the entirety of the remaining ARPA funding of $772,074 for the purpose of affordable housing and housing assistance programs in 3 areas. One in the Joint Housing Authority that has been established, 1 within county DHS, and 3 in other appropriate departments within the county, including the establishment of a new position or contract position if appropriate.
I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Not for me.
Nothing either. I guess I will just add, as we have included in all the conversations, this is, our, I think our assurance that our ARPA funds are allocated and will remain in the county. And I feel really good about putting those funds towards this, to really push things ahead. And also, I guess we talked and have yet to see what those programs look like, but not just an upfront for this 1 year, but really looking at like a 2 or 3 year, how we keep, how we sustain any support to existing human services programs, or sustain and implement new programming that we might work with partners to create. So that is also has been very important to us in our conversations. All right, anything else that comes to mind after that?
I mean, maybe just add, to explain, I think that idea, like, so it's great that Jackie exists and has been, is the executive director of the Housing Authority, but I felt like with your transfer from being a county employee to, being the executive director of the Housing Authority, it left a gap here at the county. And we could definitely use some additional capacity somewhere, to help partner with things where the county is a partner, but also, use some of our own analysis or program development. So that was my intent with that comma and additional phrasing at the end, that if, whatever the right way and fastest way is to build that capacity in the county so that we can keep being a good partner with the Housing Authority, whether it's a contract or a staff position, I think would be great within that ARPA funding.
Excellent.
And with that, I'm done.
All right, awesome. All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Excellent, we're done with our new business items. Moving on to our consent agenda. Our minutes from May 2nd, Tracy, I know they came only 30 minutes before the meeting, but did you see my comments?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw them too. I had no further comments.
Okay, I just don't understand what you said in your commissioner update.
Sorry.
Here.
Brett.
Here.
Okay.
Oh, you have it?
Sorry, I didn't scroll down far enough. RFP for plan C. Oh, so I think that should be, so we resubmitted for 200,000 for continuing design work to the underfunded courts grant program.
Okay.
Full stop. They have requested 15 minutes on May 11th to answer any questions.
Underfunded courts grant program.
Okay.
Okay,
Apologies for not scrolling down far enough.
well, that's okay, and I wasn't certain, so I didn't come, I thought it might be that, but, all right. Okay, with that clarification, and then just, that change of like leftover funds to remaining funds on item 10. Sorry, I'm going back to the consent agenda, so we just include everything, what's the bills
So,
payroll,
yeah.
okay, and pay period, I think for May 19th, would be included in the motion.
So I move that we approve the consent agenda with the discussed changes to the May 2nd minutes.
I will second, any further discussion?
None for me.
Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Excellent, and that concludes our meeting for this afternoon.
All right.
Thank you so much. It is 12:56 and we will adjourn.
Are the work sessions open to the public?